This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate Pina Colada and Thai iced coffee flavored creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
Are negative Google reviews hurting your business? Don't let unfair feedback cost you customers. At Webamax, we specialize in removing false, misleading, and damaging reviews so your online reputation stays strong. Our expert team works quickly and legally to clean up your digital presence, helping you rebuild trust. Visit us on the web at www.gowebamax.com. That's GOWEBIMAX.com, or text us for a free quote at 856-840-8343. Don't let bad reviews define you. Get immediate help from Webamax.
More rewards, more savings. With American Express Business Gold, earn up to $395 back in annual statement credits on eligible purchases at select shipping, food delivery, and retail subscription merchants, including the $155 Walmart Plus monthly membership credit and $240 flexible business credit. Enjoy the benefits of membership with the Amex Business Gold Card. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day. And that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
Another episode of the Blue Turf. We are at the
world-famous Kansas City Soccer Dome.
All I had to do was point at Eric, and he knew exactly what to say. This is Thad Bell, KC Soccer Journal. Across the not quite so wobbly table, I kind of fixed it earlier, is Eric Bergerud. How are you doing today, sir?
It's great to be – you know what they say? There's no place like Dome. It's great to be back here.
I think that's written somewhere in here, isn't it?
Dome is home. Hashtag on the wall.
Ah. All right. We have not been up here for a little while. It is – Comets are playing well. They've got a couple wins. It's a
7 wins
in a row. 2 of them in the same place last weekend. Trade deadline coming up. We'll talk about a couple trades that have happened in the league, and there is a very strong inkling there might be a trade involving the Comets soon. We'll probably, maybe, if it happens, we'll get to it later.
Cue the dun-dun-dun-dun music.
I need that.
You do?
I can add that on this little sound pad here.
That would be awesome.
Dun, dun, dun. We just got to get one that's not trademarked.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. Should we go into the
Let's do trades first.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's 2 kind of interesting ones. Taiyu from the Ambush to Milwaukee.
For Robbie Williamson.
Yes. Sorry, he gets left out in my mind.
Yep.
I apologize, Mr. Williamson. That's my fault. And then one from Tacoma to Chihuahua, because Chihuahua needs to get better.
Of course they need to get better. So Moy Gonzalez is prolific scorer, longtime player, but maybe let's talk about that St. Louis-Milwaukee trade first. Not only because we talk about the St. Louis Ambush a lot, but because Milwaukee's on the schedule coming up this Sunday.
Yeah, it'd be a chance for the Comets to see their old friend Frank.
One more time, Frank Taiyu, as if it wasn't enough. So from St. Louis's perspective, let's start there. As people who listen to our pod know, there was a suspension earlier in the year following some words that were expressed out at Empire after a disappointing Ambush loss there. Frank Taiyu was out, he was reinstated, and then all of a sudden he's traded. And so from St. Louis's perspective, they get a quality defender You never know how the cash considerations work out, but they get a quality defender. They saved money on their, I mean, it's not really a salary cap, but if you think about how much we're spending.
Salary budget.
Salary budget. Thank you, Thad. They offload a pretty significant salary there. What can you interpret in terms of where they're going? It's right now it's going to be difficult for them to get that 8th playoff spot. I don't read mine, so I don't want to say what the calculation was in terms of this season versus next season. However, if you're trying to position yourself into next season, your defense is getting better. You have more flexibility budget-wise next year, and so I can see how this trade makes sense from St. Louis's perspective.
It makes sense. It will be interesting if St. Louis ever has a drama-free year, though.
Fair. From Milwaukee's perspective, here's a team that scores more than its fair share of goals already, that is a little light defensively, having lost Marcio Leite near the end of last season. And so you bring on another scoring forward. Hey, everybody loves goals in the MASL, right?
Yep.
How you adjust in terms of your first line, your second line, where you position people. I'm sure Coach Jules is figuring this out. But to win championships, you have to win championships through defense. So it's going to be really interesting to see now that they've given up a top defender from their team, how are they going to adjust both tactically and roster-wise?
Yeah, I'm sure they have that pre-planned out, but it'll be interesting to see what they do on Sunday.
Yeah, because they had a not-so-good West Coast road trip, but that's a thing, right? They can say that. Baltimore can say that. A not-so-good West Coast, right? So you look at where they are in the standings, and they're getting further and further behind the Comets. It's a must-win, and I would say a must-win 3-point game for Milwaukee on Sunday.
A lot of must-win games.
We're at that point, and this was the weekend that if you go back on the schedule, the Comets, 2 games at Harrisburg, Milwaukee had to play San Diego and Empire, Baltimore had to play Tacoma, Chihuahua had to play UCFC. So we knew things were going to start shaking out this past weekend, and oh boy, did they shake out.
Yeah. Chihuahua laid one on UCFC, and then next day?
Yeah, well,
not so much.
So here's the thing, and we heard Coach Stokic say this after Sunday's Comets win, and I had this text exchange with Everton Marrero, the coach of UCFC, after their win Sunday. No 2 games are the same, right?
Nope.
You can assume, and there are a lot of fans who were mocking UCFC after Saturday, saying you're going to get destroyed on Sunday. It's like no 2 games are the same, and just to assume that you lay an egg on one game that you're going to roll over game 2, clearly there was a difference. Here's the catch, though, for UCFC. They head into Kansas City let me rephrase that. They head into St. Louis first on Friday, and then to Kansas City on Saturday without the star of the league, Kelvin Oliveira. And so it's going to be a really difficult month for them as they try to figure out how do we find our own character and personality without Kelvin.
Yeah, that's another one of those where I understand you want a guy of that quality on your team, but at the same time, when you know he's not going to be there relatively consistently, I just wonder if that, in the long run, hurts you.
Well, and that's push-pull, and so it's also interesting, too, because Frank Taillou was there last year. He left, and so the powers that be, and you're talking about Vinny Dantas, you're talking about Milton DeAndrade, Ronaldinho, Gordy Gerson, they're going to have to figure this out moving forward. There's no Kelvin to get you a hat trick.
And they don't have a bad team without Kelvin, but they were a really good team.
They're a quality team regardless.
Right.
They were a potential, and it sounds like he should be back for the playoffs. In that format with him there, they could still win the championship.
Yes.
I'm no doubt in my mind. It's just the next month is going to be a harder harder road for UCFC than it would be otherwise.
Yeah, they'll probably put themselves in a lower seeding position, but that's not always the worst thing.
They're well coached too, so you never know. But we digress because we didn't talk about the other trade. So So Tacoma unloads Moy Gonzalez, who just hit the 300-point plateau the previous week, to Chihuahua. You look at Chihuahua winning 19-6 on the road, right? This isn't at Corner Sport Arena. This is 19 goals they scored on the road, and you think, oh, you need another player. It's conceivable still that Chihuahua doesn't get the 1 seed. And we'll talk next week about that huge game down at Corner Sport Arena, which is the rematch between the Comets and Chihuahua. But right now you have Chihuahua, Kansas City, and San Diego jockeying for that 1 seed. And perhaps Chihuahua thought, we need a little bit of insurance here as we head into the playoffs, because you absolutely want to, and we've said this multiple times, you want a 1 or 2 seed heading into that weekend.
Yes.
And maybe they feel like we're now in a better position with that trade, but we'll see.
It's nice to have a team maybe wanting to trade in order to face the Comets in the playoffs.
Maybe. And you look at where the Comets are now. I had this conversation with Coach Stokic post-game on Sunday. Last season, total, after 24 games, they finished with 45 points. They are already at 38 points. So if you look at the progress year over year, it's substantial. And we go to all the games, and when you're living it, maybe you don't have a moment to appreciate it. But think back to last season where they were, particularly during that 8-game stretch in the middle.
Yep.
It's significant in terms of how they have evolved and improved year over year.
They haven't had a long stretch of bad form, but again, we when we look back at last year, we need to remember that there was a lot of really tough road games in that 8-game stretch,
and they have tough road games in the final stretch of the season. So understand that, but suffice it to say, heading towards the end, I'd rather be where they are now than where they were at the same point last season.
And while, again, they are tough road games coming ahead, they're not the worst team as far as still having to play on the road. I mean, I think Chihuahua has played most of their games at home. They have still a lot of road games. And the teams, again, we're never overlooking teams, but the teams that they're facing coming up are on average not as tough as the teams they had in that 8-game stretch last season. So, again, not trying to say they're going to win these games or all of them or anything like that, but just trying to kind of balance out the perspective a little bit.
And this coming week plus is going to be telling just because of who they play against, but we haven't seen a Comets team for several years now that is 5-1-1 on the road at that level. It had been 500 at best and below 500 for the last several years. You're starting to head back towards that Vlatko Andonovsky mindset of we can play anywhere and we can beat any team anywhere, and we definitely have shades of that right now.
Very, very true. Out of those 2 games at Harrisburg, anything that really stood out?
It was a foreshadowing of some weekends they have coming up, including this weekend. It's tough to play back-to-back games.
Yes.
It's tougher to play back-to-back games on the road. You're not back at your home the first night. You're in a hotel room. That's a difficult arena to play in as well. The ball bounces. It's tricky, and in that environment, you can say what you want about roster versus roster quality, but Harrisburg is a very tough play. It's a tough team to play, and it's a tough place to play.
And, again, I will sometimes jokingly say things about Harrisburg, but when you watch those games, they are a better team than their record. They just don't have quite enough to get over the top in a lot of those situations.
They also have a extreme quality goalkeeper there in Hugo Silva, and particularly on Sunday, he kept them in the game almost all the way to the end.
And a good coach.
Pat Healy. Yeah, no, they have a good coach. I spent some quality time online with Harrisburg fans, and I think they're frustrated, and I get that they're frustrated. That it has not been a good decade for them, but
no.
But we're not in a league of salary caps. We're not in a league where every environment is the same. And so Harrisburg has certain disadvantages compared to a team like Kansas City in terms of recruiting and retaining players.
Literally, if they had two players, probably just two players, then they would be talking about a middle of the pack performance instead of a lower quarter.
I think that's totally fair. That they're not that far away from being a 7 or an 8 seed. It's not that stark. It's just the way the schedule laid out, kind of like the way it laid out for Kansas City. Some difficult stretches on the road that just kind of teed up those extra losses. All
right. So 2 wins in Harrisburg. A little closer one game, but it still comes out 2 wins. Comets are sitting in second place right now in the table.
They are in second place, and with games on hand over Chihuahua, so it gets really interesting.
And San Diego behind them.
San Diego behind them too. One afterthought about that trip. So we saw Rion Marquez do what he does on Saturday. Harrisburg adjusted Sunday, and you saw other players step up. So that backheel pass we saw this weekend from Zach Rega to Eric Pereira.
Yeah.
Eric Pereira's first goal ever.
Yeah, congrats to him.
Yep. Henry Ramirez keeps hitting bangers. Good for him too, right?
Not a ton of goal, but every goal is a banger.
Right, and so what we're seeing is it's not just 1 or 2 players, which is what you want to see. And the other thing, how many times have we talked about Chad Vandergriff on offense, and nobody seems to track him? So usually he's just like trucking down the left side and nobody sees him. This past weekend he's trucking down the right side and nobody sees him, and he scores goals.
He has that messy invisibility about him.
Oh. Yeah, that's a whole separate podcast about how do you track players who are world-class and let them be so wide open, but we can talk about that at a different time.
Yeah, somehow those world-class players still find ways to be invisible.
They do.
Because then that's part of their charm.
That's it.
But, again, like you said, it's another pod. We'll talk about those type of things. What do they need to focus on going into this weekend? Because they will play Utica after Utica plays in St. Louis. They come here, so they'll face Utica, Kelvin-less Utica, and then tough trip up to face Milwaukee. So how do you manage that if you're a coach?
So there's too many old sports cliches. You got to play them one game at a time, but that's true, right?
There's a reason they're old cliches.
There's a reason. You have to focus on that UCFC game first and not worry about Milwaukee. I can say that. I know the coaching staff is preparing them for both games.
Oh, yeah.
But from a player's perspective, you have to look at UCFC, and you have to have the mindset that just like this weekend, you couldn't go into Harrisburg and assume, oh, we've got this. We can just kind of cruise through. You will not be able to cruise through UCFC even without Kelvin.
No.
They will press you.
Players.
We saw this last year. UCFC before, in the pre-Kelvin era, came into Kansas City and won transition game, press game, etc. And I would expect to see some of that this weekend. You get past that, and then you've got a battle on Sunday because Milwaukee absolutely needs 3 points. So Kansas City, as you said, Thad, is sitting in second place, 38 points in 15 games played. Milwaukee has played 16 games and is 11 points behind the Comets. You can just do some math there. The distance is growing, and if Kansas City should win on Saturday night, it'll even be a more stark difference between those two teams.
And they still have to come here to play.
They do, and that's what's interesting is weather aficionados might recall in January when the Sunday afternoon game between the Wave and the Comets was postponed. It would have been interesting to see what you can't turn back the clock, what would have happened then, because Milwaukee was playing better, I believe, back then. They'll come here in March for a Friday night game, which will be on CBS Sports Golazo Network, Yay Us. We get an additional game there. And the game is going to mean more just based on when it is in the season. And so I would expect you'll start seeing a typical Kansas City-Milwaukee game this Sunday, and people writing down their grudges to bring them back to that game on the 14th.
Oh, yeah, and when they come down here, the new moves that teams may make over the next day will have been integrated and have some time to fully gel.
You're really hitting strongly at things, Thad.
Don't know what you mean.
Okay.
But yeah, that again, we may have a second segment after this pod, so make sure you do keep listening, just in case there will be a short little music break and maybe an ad, and there might be a second segment to this pod, and there may not. So
and if there isn't, you can find Thad Bell anywhere online. Text him, email him, ask him, why are you being so cryptic, and what did you mean?
Yeah, and I will explain it at some point. I'm pretty sure it might be after this pod, though.
Okay.
I just like to make sure that we're crossing the T's, dotting the I's. I had to make sure I got the right
That's
letters. Right. Watching practice right now, in case you can't hear the background noise.
At the world-famous Kansas City Soccer Dome. I had to get it in.
And I see a player that right now is not under contract to the Comets.
That's fair.
But in the next 30 minutes, they might be.
That's fair, too.
All right. What else do we need to discuss today besides potential other breaking news?
Well, 2 games this weekend, obviously. And then when we come back to the next episode, a huge weekend. If you think about who's at the top of the standings, Kansas City has to make that dreaded trip, I said dreaded, back to Chihuahua, the Corner Sport Arena, for a Friday night game against Chihuahua. And you talk about legs. Then they have to come back home for a Sunday afternoon game against the San Diego Sockers. Next weekend will really determine where things are going to land first, second, and third place.
Yeah, it's like every weekend for the next 3 weeks, I think it's pretty much that's going to flip the tables a little bit or affect them.
It's like must-see TV. And kudos the way the schedule played out, that there are these crucial games that are hitting on the back end of the season.
Yeah, and schedules are, I fairly often complain about them, but schedules are what they are, and you have to play those teams. But it is Chicago, San Diego, Milwaukee.
Chihuahua. You said Chicago.
Chihuahua. Whoa. Chihuahua, San Diego, Milwaukee, Kansas City, Utica, all playing really significant games right now.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Man, where did I get Chicago? I don't know, CHI. That's like last couple weeks ago, I really butchered naming the podcast, didn't I?
Oh, well, hey,
I called the San Diego Sockers the Wave. But I was thinking of the NWSL team, not the Milwaukee.
There's too many leagues to track, so I get that totally.
And similar names in a lot of those cases.
That's right.
So anyway, it was fun. Eric pointed that out, and I had to go mad scramble, delete stuff, re-put it out there.
I'd already put it out of my mind. I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I only feel that I can talk about things intelligently if I'm willing to admit the stupid mistakes that I make. So I am willing to be wrong.
This is an honest podcast.
It is. All right. Anything else we need to discuss right now?
I think that's it, other than hope to see a big crowd on Saturday night. Team Vassos, Team Lux battling at halftime. And I'll be in the booth.
I will not be there.
That's your choice. I would say that the last time I recall this happened was last year, where Sporting Kansas City had its opener the same night as a Comets game, and there was a great crowd for the Comets game too. So something about this city is it's not just moving to one team. There's enough fans to spread around.
Oh yeah, and then the next Sporting home game will be the home opener for the Current. There are 2 different times,
right?
But it's still is a stress on the pocketbook and time and travel and sobriety for some of those folks.
I totally get that.
So I hate missing any Comets games. I hate missing the media celebrity game, whatever it is, and but if it was only a little bit earlier, I would do both. But
I understand.
I don't home opener, sporting it's always that balance for me, like a home opener, a regular season game, a playoff game versus a regular season game. It's all these, it's always trying to balance where I end up spending my time taking photos. Sometimes I'm trying to do both. I've done that with the Comets before. Took photos, went to sporting game, at halftime.
I understand that.
All right. Appreciate everybody listening, and stay tuned. All right, if you listen to the first segment, this is the second segment that we were teasing a little bit, just tiny little bit, not much teasing at all. This is still Thad Bell with Eric Berggren on the other side of the table.
Still at the world-famous Kansas City Soccer Dome.
Absolutely. And a trade has been made or is about to be made, or the final document is about to be signed, but we feel comfortable with saying it now. The Comets have acquired... You want to say his name? I'm terrible.
Sure. From the Tacoma Stars, defender Stefan Mijatovic.
Stefan Mijatovic.
Yep.
I need a nickname for him. I don't know if I can come up with one that he would like right at this point.
Isn't it Chicago Kid? That's his Instagram, something
Really?
like that. Or no, Kid Chicago on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kid Chicago. Maybe that's where I got the Chicago in the last segment.
That may be where you got it.
It was in my mind. I don't think it was.
Yep.
But,
Yep.
So this is bound to have a little controversy around it.
Oh, it'll make waves across the league. See what I did there?
Yeah. I think you had that line prepared.
I had that
honestly.
line prepared.
It will make waves. It will make a splash. It will see if a star comes to the Comets. Where else? Maybe it'll ambush some fans.
Oh, there you go.
How many other teams has he been with?
UCFC,
Yes.
Empire Strikers. Wasn't he in Orlando with the Seawolves? I'll have to look it up.
Not totally
We'll
sure.
have to look
I
it
did
up.
look at his career earlier,
Yeah,
trying
we'll have to look it up.
trying to find.
Most recently, he was on Tacoma's roster this year. Last season, he was on Empire, but loaned to Tacoma near the end of the season.
Yeah.
He had been at UCFC, but he was traded. We talked about Frank Taiu being traded in the first segment, but Taiu went from Empire to UCFC for Mijatovic. That right, and then before UCFC, he was St. Louis Ambush. How's that? That's the most recent history.
Fairly well-traveled player.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just leave it at that for the moment. Very, very talented. Does not always put it together.
I think it's fair to say when most fans saw him last, he was all over social media because of an incident that took place at a Tacoma-Milwaukee game.
Yes.
Actually, what took place after a Tacoma-Milwaukee game. He was suspended for 4 games at the time. He did play in the All-Star game. I saw him in
Yes.
Utica, but he has not played for the Tacoma Stars since that incident in Milwaukee.
Right. There was a league-mandated anger management course that he needed to complete.
Similar, if Comets fans recall what was imposed upon Derek Huffman when Derek Huffman had his incident with Nicolau Neto in Kansas City several years ago.
Yeah, it's a I don't want to say common thing, but it's a standard thing to apply when people have gotten a little out of control. So this is like one of these I want to kind of walk a little delicately because I've heard things and I feel like some of it is not my place to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try to walk a little delicately here. They've made the trade. It'll be for, I think, cash considerations.
That's the most popular player in the MASL is cash considerations.
I was going to make a bad joke, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
He's had to complete the anger management course. The Comets have taken a number of steps, including, I think, another anger management course. They have him talking to, they have a wellness coach. They have him put in certain restrictions around what they want him to do. And if he follows all these, he will be a pretty darn good additional player.
So all that is, I can attest to all that. I would just add a couple different things for fans to think about. From a Kansas City perspective, this is not an out of the blue first time occurrence in Kansas City. All you have to do is look to the east of us at Arrowhead Stadium,
Yes.
GHE Field, and Kareem Hunt got cut by Kansas City, got brought back by Kansas City after some legal issues, right? So it's not like this hasn't, and we're not even talking about legal issues. We're just talking about league mandated issues
right.
in this incident. So it's not like this hasn't happened before in Kansas City. Will there be fans across the league who yell and scream and point fingers? Absolutely. But I would suggest that one of the fan bases who will yell and scream the most is willing to defend equitable behavior,
right,
and rationalize it all the way. So I'm sure this is going to generate a lot of buzz on social media. I'm sure this is going to generate some boos on the road.
Yes.
When Mijatovic plays representing the Comets. Absolutely. But from the Comets' perspective, they still see something in him, not just as a player, but as a person, and they're willing to take the chance
yes,
to put him in the system for him to prove that he deserves to stay in the system, just like other teams have done, including the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, and it's not just because we cover the Comets, but the Kansas City Comets organization is extremely professional in the MASL compared to a lot of places where they say show up and play. Now, I'm not even sure how often some of them practice anymore, but it's extremely professional. They have multiple coaches. They have wellness coach. They have fitness contracts and coaches, and just all these different things that make them a really highly professional organization that isn't always found in MASL. They have a coach who is, I will say, he's one of the nicest guys, but as a coach, he can be pretty much of a hard ass.
That's totally fair.
And he will, if you aren't doing what he wants you to do, he will let you know it, and you could get moved if you aren't doing what you need to do. So for somebody who's had some anger issues, getting the help and the support and the structure. Again, there's several things I've heard that I don't want to say because I don't feel comfortable.
Can I just
interject?
Let me use a different word. You said anger issues. Let's just say behavior issues. I
Yes.
think that's a broader term.
Yeah.
And
I just say anger
yeah.
because they went to
Yeah.
anger management course.
Sure. I think behavior issues is fine, but I mean, ultimately it's going to be, we see a pathway forward for you. You're going to have to play by the rules that everybody else in
Right.
Kansas City has to. And the Comets are willing to own this, right?
Yeah.
Which is, if it works successfully, they will own it. If it doesn't work, they will own that too. So they're putting their reputation on the line here.
And I was talking about how coach has, will have an effect on that, but it's not just the coach. It's leaders on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Nacho, Ramon, Zach, who has, had his travels through multiple teams.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a place where guys come to play and they want to stay. And the team, the players, the coaches, everybody will hold other players accountable
Sure.
to the proper behavior.
Right.
Now, if it turns out is it a risk for the Comets? Yes, but it's a low risk because they could get a very good player and help a guy out get his life in a better spot. I'm not saying straightened out, but just in a better spot.
Sure.
And move on.
So let's talk. We talked about off the field. Let's talk about on the field in terms of
Yes.
what the opportunities for the Comets are. So as Comets fans recall, last year John Sosa and the Comets, I don't even know how to describe it. Let's just say they went in their different directions.
Parted
Is that
ways.
fair? Parted ways. Thank you.
That's the standard PR speak.
So what Kansas City has missed, in my opinion, since then, is a consistent goal scoring threat on the back line.
Right.
So Lucia
From distance.
Lucia Tetsane has hit bangers. Most of his goals have been inside the yellow line.
Yeah.
And he's a natural midfielder playing defense, right? He's been
and he's been battling some injuries.
Yeah, right. So most of the defenders' goals this year have been not from distance, they've been from inside. And so as teams try to pack in defensively, having somebody who can score from the outside forces teams to come out, which creates passing lanes, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So not only gives you a threat from the outside, it gives you somebody who has proven time and again he can score from the outside. So think not just in the run of play, but think about set pieces, think about power play, et cetera. This is an element that the Comets haven't had that they're bringing to the table. What that does defensively, I think many people who would look at his game would say he's more of an offensive defender than and you can look for parallels historically on other offensive defenders, how their defense played out over the years, and maybe that's a whole separate podcast. But what is that going to do for the lines? What is that going to do for how and when they use them? We don't know yet. Stay tuned. He is working out here at the world-famous Kansas City Soccer Dome, and I think there's just a familiarity and acclimation thing that needs to take shape.
Yeah, right now he's in a line with a lot of the younger players getting shots taken at him right now.
Sure.
So he's going through the dues, I guess.
Well, the other thing that we don't know, so we're recording this midweek. Rosters have not been finalized for this weekend. We don't know whether he's playing one game, 2 games, no games. There's nothing guaranteed here, and so but the possibility that he comes in with UCFC, it's his former team, with Milwaukee, his most recent nemesis, if you want to look at it like that.
Yeah.
It creates an interesting storyline, potentially.
And we're recording this midday on the 26th. The trade deadline is tomorrow, the 27th. So they have time to get this under the gun, under the wire. So just in the long run, I just kind of want to sum it up. The Comets are trying to do every bit of due diligence they can. Like I said, I've heard multiple things, which I feel like uncomfortable talking about in any detail. And they're doing their due diligence, and if it works out, it's great for the team and him. If it doesn't work out, it's a minimal risk for the Comets, other than they get to have the Wave make fun of them for a little while.
Well, and I would anticipate that there's going to be all sorts of venom from Wave fans, and my response would be, I'll say it this way, Thad, because I had this exchange with a Blast fan, and Blast fans are a whole separate issue in themselves. If you come to this league and don't expect hypocrisy, you're in the wrong league. And so Wave fans have been more forgiving in the past for transgressions of their own players than they have been for transgressions of people on other teams. So take that for what it's worth.
Honestly, that just is mostly fandom in general.
Total fandom in general, right?
I've seen players from Kansas City do things that, Kansas City fans like, well, yeah, you shouldn't have done it, but, and, same for Milwaukee, same for Baltimore, same in MLS, same in NWSL, it's, remember in NWSL one day when a player just walked across the player, Shea Groom laying on the ground, and somebody just stepped on her back and walked across like, oh, was there somebody there?
Yep.
And their team defended it, and Kansas City fans were ready to throw down.
Oh, there's that. There's the referees are against us. It's funny is when you win a championship, you forget.
Yep.
You forget about the calls, right? All you talk about is your team's success, but when you lose, it's like, oh, it wasn't our fault. So there's going to be some of that. We don't know yet how Comets Nation is going to respond to this. It'll be interesting. For the most part, historically, the Comets have been accepting of players coming in on trades. We'll see how this shakes out.
Yeah, and at least this wasn't a trade where you sent 3 players to another team, 3 favorites to another team for another guy.
I still love talking about that. Any opportunity, Thad, and I had to, when I interviewed Ryan Budzinski for my 10 for 10 show, I had to bring that one up because...
Of course.
Of course. Why wouldn't you?
All right. Anything we want to add to this?
No, other than stay tuned, and we don't have any inside information about the 16-man roster for Saturday or Sunday, so we'll be watching out for that, just like Comets fans will be.
And again, overall, I think it's a good move for him to attempt, and it's a worthwhile risk.
And the Comets own this one, and so they'll either be saying "told you so" or they'll be the first to say "we tried."
Yep. And we are out. All right, back with another segment. I have with me Coach Dokic. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad. Fresh off a couple of wins in Harrisburg.
Yep.
How's the team doing? How are you feeling?
I think first of all, people don't understand like the environment in Harrisburg, the field, the environment. So it's really difficult to play there. I know that we didn't play a great game of managing the game, in my opinion. We had moments that we did well, but we didn't do it for the whole game. So I think, for me, it's the boys did well. I'm proud of them, but there's still a lot of things that we need to work on going into, hopefully into playoffs. I think I can say that. But I think, in general for us is just to keep improving every game, every practice to get better, and that's always our goal.
You have a lot of tough weekends coming up ahead of you. How do you manage all of those? Are you in the position to do well, you think, with all the players you have?
I think it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge, but I think compared to last year to this year, I think we have a little bit more depth that we talked about in the beginning of the season. So I feel a bit more confident when it comes down to that. But, there's still things that can go wrong, injuries that can happen, just like Rian is out. We have some players battling some other injuries and trying to fight through it. And eventually we're going to have to give them a break, just like we did a couple players for this weekend. So, again, it's just managing and making sure that we stay as healthy as possible as we can for playoffs.
Rian's out, hopefully not for long?
Right now, at the moment, it doesn't seem like it's going to be long.
Okay.
But again, with hamstrings, you have to. It's not as bad as we initially thought. I think he said that we were able to push it if we wanted to. But I think what the conversation that me and Sean had with Rian was, let's play smart because, we have another big month in front of us. So there's going to be enough times to make up for that game. So.
Plus, he's got to catch up to Kelvin in scoring. So you got to get.
Yeah, there's that too. And don't forget that his wife is pregnant and she's anytime due as well too. So we had a little conversation yesterday and I told Rian the only thing I want him to focus on is the birth of his child, but he was already calculating which game he should play. I mean, might miss because of it, and I'm like, don't worry about that right now. Just focus on that.
That's one of the things I definitely respect about the Comets organization. Family is the most important thing.
That's our number one value.
Winning is second, but family is first.
Family is first. Being together is first. We have our team values that we stand by. I stand by. The team does as well. It's family, hard work, and respect. So those three things put together, creates the culture and environment that we want.
Cool. So I may have this part on the pod. I might cut it out if things change. But I see a player out there that's practicing with you guys. I understand he might be acquired by trade soon. Stefan, how do you say his last name? Mijatovic. I try, man. I really try. I don't succeed very often. I know there was a little controversy about him recently, but I feel like the Comets organization would be a good place for him.
I think, again, within our culture, he has no choice either to buy in or he moves on, right? I think there was a conversation, and again, I'm not worried about. There's nobody that can come into my locker room and ruin it at this point. The boys are strong, the culture is strong, so I'm very happy and positive about that. Now, Stefan has an opportunity to, he's had some rough starts in different teams, different environments, and now he has opportunity in our environment to succeed. I think he's a very talented player, but he needs to learn that the way he dealt with it in the past is different here, and I think he's fit in pretty well so far. The boys like him. He's a very talented player, so if he buys in with his talent, I think he can help us, especially in this little stretch that we have here in March. But I think even in playoffs, because of, we can't take away what he's achieved, right?
Right.
I think
he's a talented player.
He's a very talented player. So we can say about what things have happened and occurred in the last couple of years, especially, and talk about it very negatively. But there's, I'm a firm believer in an environment can shape a person that's, I wouldn't say a bad person, but a person that is struggling with their emotions and struggling with managing that. And our environment is so strong, I feel confident that this environment will help him, but it's up to him of how he deals with it. He
Right.
can choose not to buy in, or he can choose to do it because the environment was going to force him. So I felt comfortable of bringing him and seeing how he does with us. We kind of brought him for kind of, 2 weeks, kind of like a trial to see how he does. I don't know if that can be in the podcast or not. But I think objectively for me is that I wanted to see in this 2 weeks of how he would fit in and buy into it. And so far, it's been good. Now the question is only when am I going to be able to trust him to play? That is the next stage of his. And some players it takes less time, some it takes more. I'm hoping it's less with him. But again, I think he's a talented player that we can utilize and help us maybe take that one step towards the championship as well.
It seems to me this is a kind of, I don't want to say low risk because it's, involving a person's life, but, and how they handle it. But it's a kind of a low risk, high reward for you guys. You come in, you give him a chance, and you have strong leadership within the team, the coaches, the veteran players, Nacho, Ramon, Zach, etc., who can all help kind of make sure that he understands how things are going to go, right?
Yeah, I mean, help him, guide him, help him, again, the thing with Stefan is, we have had great conversations. I think he's a, really, really good guy. It's just that he's misunderstood some moments, and his actions have not shown that. But I think, when you come down to it is, I don't think he's ever been in an environment like this, right? So hopefully this environment, and the one thing that I love about my job as a head coach is that I can give opportunities to players like that and help them and guide them through moments like these in their lives, right, in their careers. Just like, the other players that I brought here, that I had here, I took a chance on them, and, they've succeeded. So hopefully we can have that from Stefan, and I'm really hoping for him that he really succeeds, because I think that would be, I would be really happy for him that he's finally got a place and a home. Because, one of the things I told him was, I'm not just bringing you for one season. I bring players here to be the future of the club.
Yeah.
And, he's made comments of, I want to win a championship, and then that grade 7, I want to be here. Yeah, our goal is to win a championship every year, okay? It might not happen, it might happen, right? But objectively, it's something that we can build on and grow on, because I feel like that we're better than we were last year.
Oh, I think so too.
And again, the objective is to keep growing every year to get to where our goal is to be the best team that we can be, right? So I told him was, it's not just for this year. We want it for the future as well. So, he's understood that, and I guess maybe he's never been told that or whatever it is. But for me is that I think he can, if he really wants to buy in, I think he can be a big piece of this organization and this team in the future as well too.
And honestly, more importantly, just as helps grow as a person. I mean, on-field success is a fun and amazing and great memories, but growing as a person is even better.
Correct, but on this team, it's not just on the field, it's off the field stuff that we do as well too. That's very important to me. And when I got this job, that was my biggest pitch to the organization was, it's not just on the field, it's off the field. We're going to be a family and be organized and build this culture.
I feel like it comes full circle to what we talked about earlier.
Yes, it does. It does.
Thank you for the time, Coach.
No problem. Anytime.